welcome parents, welcome everybody who's watching this tonight. We are the National Bright Family Engagement Team. And for those of you new to watching this learning session, Bright is a movement, a network that transforms how schools support students and families who have experienced a mental health disruption. So we're part of a larger national team, and we come together every month to do these learning sessions for all of you. And we're so pleased to be able to do this together. So I want to just introduce my colleagues. We have Lakeisha Wilson over there. We've got Victor Bradley right there. Julie Patton. We are the Bright Family Engagement Coordinators, and our colleague Alex, who's our tech support and just fabulous colleague, is in the corner there. And in a second, you get to meet Kia, who is going to share lots of insights with us today about a really important topic. But I just wanted to share a couple quick things. So the National Family Engagement Team, as I mentioned, we every single month we theme the months around topics that we've been told are of interest to parents. And they are topics that really run the gamut. So this month's theme is about parenting an anxious child. And I think a lot of us can relate to that or have had those shared experiences. So that's this month's theme, parenting my anxious child. The first week of the month kicks off with a learning session just like this, just what we're about to get into. The second week of the month, the second, third, and fourth weeks, we have what we call parent conversations. So those are just really informal times for anybody to log on, come together, and connect with other parents and have conversations about that topic. So if you've seen the learning session, fantastic. We can have parent conversations about that. If you haven't, come anyway, because it's just a nice time to connect with other parents and each other and to talk about that theme. So that's every single month. The second week of the month is parent conversation in particular for parents of elementary age kids. The third week of the month is a parent conversation for parents of middle and high school age kids. And the last week of the month is an affinity conversation for BIPOC parents around the same theme. So those are every week. We also have a Bright Facebook page where you can connect with parents that way if that feels better for folks. But what we're really excited about this year coming up on March 16th, for those of you who live near enough to Lowell, Massachusetts, we're actually having an in-person gathering, and we're going to model that in-person gathering just in the same way I described what we do every month. So we're going to have, you'll get to know us a little better. We're going to be on a panel talking about our parenting journeys, and we'll have a learning session that night of that day. We'll have a learning session with a really fantastic speaker and parenting coach named Destiny Ann. And then we'll have some in-person parent conversations there as well. And we'll have food, and we will have a door prize. Like that idea. We will have books to give away. We'll have Dunkin' gift cards. If you live within 25 miles of Lowell High School and you need some support and help with transportation, we will reimburse transportation. If you have a language, if English is not the preferred language for you, we will have interpreters. There is a flyer in the chat where on the YouTube live right now, you'll see a flyer right there, and it has a QR code where you can get more information, sign up for this great event, and let us know if you need help with transportation, childcare, or interpretation. So that was a lot, but just so many different ways for you to connect with each other and with us. And we love talking to parents. So we hope you'll join us one way or another. And with that, I will pass it over to my colleague, Julie.
Hello, everyone. Tonight, I'm going to introduce Dr. Kia Cheeseborough Jackson. She is a social psychologist, educator, and community advocate with nearly a decade of experience in education and community engagement. and a passion for bridging the gap between academic theory and community-based practice. She earned a BA in psychology from Spelman College and a PhD in social psychology from Clark University in Worcester, Massachusetts. Currently, she serves as a training coordinator at the University of Maryland Global Campus and adjunct professor at Smith College. Her professional journey includes a diverse range of roles, from serving as an elementary school teacher to working as a school guidance counselor and child welfare advocate. In each of these positions, she focused on advocating for children and families, striving to create supportive environments that foster growth, resilience, and empowerment. She is the proud mother of one son, Elijah, who is boisterous, intelligent, and an all around joy. She treasures the journey of parenthood, embracing both its challenges and rewards. Kia, thank you for being with us tonight. I'm going to hand the floor to you.
Great. Thank you all so much. Thank you. It's so odd always hearing about yourself. I am going to go ahead and share my screen, and then we are going to hop right in. I'll just make sure that you all can, one, hear me, and two, that I'm actually sharing the correct screen. Are we good to go? All right. So thank you all again for welcoming me into this space. I am really excited to speak with you about tonight's topic, which is parenting the anxious child. As was stated, and I'm sure he's so excited, or he'll be so excited to see this once he gets home. I am a parent to an 8-year-old who has been navigating anxiousness and who's been on a journey of navigating anxiousness for a while. So this topic is very near and dear to my heart. And throughout this presentation, you'll hear me share some of the things that I found that has worked with my child, so coming from the parent side, as well as things that I found that work with my students in my previous roles as a teacher and a guidance counselor. So thank you all. And without further ado, we'll hop right on in. So I first want to start this presentation just by saying that anxiety, anxiousness is a universal human emotion that is experienced by both adults and children. And like all of our emotions, anxiety is trying to tell us something about our environment. And that something is that there is potentially something, or there's something that we think is dangerous that may cause harm to our personhood, our well-being, or harm to the people, places, things that we care about. And these feelings of worry, nervousness, unease are often about something that might happen in the future. So thinking about a test that you have to take in school later on this week, or thinking about a future interaction in which you have to meet new people. And so this really triggers our fight or flight response. And so in this way, the experience of anxiety and fear are very similar and often used interchangeably. But the one thing that I want to point out, or the one main difference that I want to highlight tonight, is that anxiety occurs even in the absence of real danger, meaning a child thinks that they are in danger, or they anticipate that they may become or may be in danger, even when no danger exists in their environment. And so this is different than the fight or flight response that is activated when we're experiencing fear, which is about an immediate threat in the present. Still, whenever this fight or flight response is activated, this can impact children's physical bodies, their thoughts, and their behaviors. And so some physical signs that students or children are facing or experiencing anxiousness are that they begin to feel sick, they may feel tense, they may become hot and sweaty, they may become sensitive to things in their environment, so thinking about noises, sights, or smells. They may have an increase in heart rate, which I experience quite often when I'm anxious, and they may begin taking short, shallow breaths. And so, as it relates to their thoughts, because the main objective of the fight or flight response is to alert the child, about the possible existence of danger. A major cognitive change is that the child begins to shift their attention to the environment, right? Searching or focusing on that potential danger. And so this in turn takes away their ability to focus or concentrate on tasks that may be occurring in the present. And so we may see a child not being unable to focus in class and or not being able to focus on a task at home. And then finally, as it relates to behaviors, children who are struggling with anxiousness or they're experiencing anxiousness may also behave differently or start using various coping mechanisms to try to manage or avoid that feeling of anxiousness. And so this may look like avoiding social situations, withdrawing or isolating themselves, becoming more irritable or anger, or what we may describe as aggressive in certain situations, and or having outbursts or having a tantrum. And so I like to really quickly go over this because this is a question that comes up really often, and that is like, what do children have to worry about, right? Why would they experience anxiousness, right? Why do they have feelings of anxiousness? And before I go into this, I kind of say this all the time to my friends and even my son. I'm like, I wish I could be a child again, right? When I was a child, I wasn't worried about bills. I wasn't worried about my career. I wasn't worried about what we need to eat for dinner or the cost of eggs. Like I just was living my best life, focused on the next movie, the next show, the next toy that I wanted to request from my parents, right? And so to some extent, I know that I am romanticizing my childhood. I'm sure that as a 7-year-old or a 10-year-old or even a teenager, I had real life worries and there were things that I was anxious about and are worried about. But I want us to think about how often we as adults think about childhood in that way. And because we often think about childhood as this worry-free zone, we fail to kind of recognize all of the things that cause nervousness or worries for our children. And so children can really be anxious or begin to feel anxious for a variety of reasons, some of which I've included on the screen. But if I were to poll each of you about your own child, if I were to inquire about your childhood, or even if I were to ask you about children that you've worked with, we can all come up with various examples of what children are worried about. And so this is not an exhaustive list, but just some things that have come up in my own household, as well as just working with children in my community. So generally children worry about school, right? So whether that is being able to engage in their schoolwork and understand their objectives and the standards, and or worrying about those social interactions, right? Having to navigate relationships and friendships with other children. Children are also a part of our household members, right? And so when there are significant changes in our households, we may also see children worrying about those changes. So moving to a new house, parents separating, or even changing schools, right? And so that may look like a middle of the year change. That may look like a change that starts at the beginning of a school year. That may look like a change from daycare to elementary school, right? Or lower elementary to upper elementary, or even elementary school to middle school. We saw this a lot during the COVID-19 pandemic, and we're still seeing this for some of our families, is being worried about the death or illness of family members or friends, right? And because we also know that we are all coming from different backgrounds and we have different lived experiences. We do have children, and the children in your household may have different responsibilities. And so sometimes children are worried about being able to fulfill their household responsibilities and do things correctly and well and in a way that is pleasing to their parents or caregivers. And so, with that being said, I want us to kind of answer this question together, and you'll hear me talk about this throughout. But another question that comes up is really why this focus on anxiousness, right? And so, you'll hear me say throughout this presentation that anxiousness is a normal human emotion, right? And so, if it is so normal and if it is so typical, why do we focus on childhood anxiousness and anxiety? And so one of the things that I want to mention is that focusing on children's anxiousness is really crucial because untreated childhood anxiety can significantly impact their development, their social interactions with their peers and family members, their academic performance, as well as their overall well-being. And so early recognition and intervention is really key to making sure that children are able to manage their anxiousness effectively, right? And when they're unable to manage it effectively, that we are providing them with those additional supports and resources to be able to cope. So now that we have a shared understanding of what anxiety is and what I mean by anxiousness and how it may look and feel for our children, I want to shift to how we as parents and caregivers can help our children manage their feelings of anxiousness. And I strategically use the word manage because we are not solving a problem or eliminating an experience. And so as a parent, of course, I do not want to see my child unhappy. It breaks my heart to see him unhappy. However, even with all of the available supports, I know that children may still experience anxiousness. And so, again, because it is a normal emotion that children and adults feel, and because some level of anxiousness really can be productive and beneficial to our everyday lives, our goal really isn't going to be to eliminate it for our children, but instead to help them manage it. And so today I'll speak about 4 recommendations that I have. The first being to create a supportive environment. The second being to teach coping skills. The third being modeling healthy habits and coping skills. And then finally, seeking out resources when you need extra assistance and support. One of the ways in which you can create a supportive environment is by encouraging open communication and dialogue with your children. And so, encouraging children to express their feelings and thoughts can really help them to process their emotions, and it also lets them know again that it's okay to talk about worries and fears, right? It's okay to talk about that uneasy feeling that you feel in certain situations. That is going to be normal and it can be managed. And we're going to work together to manage how you cope with those experiences and feelings. And so, one suggestion that I have for encouraging this open communication is really to ask your children open ended questions. And so, for example, can you tell me about a time when you felt nervous or scared, right? What did it feel like, right? So, really trying to reach out and pull some of those detailed responses from your child so that we can get kind of a visual of what they're experiencing, right? If we close our eyes and they're giving us all these descriptive details, that we can imagine what they're going through. Another example is simply going to be when I was your age, right? I was scared of spiders. And if you let my 8-year-old tell it, I am still very afraid of spiders, right? So then I may say, do you have an intense fear, right? And can you tell me about a time when you had to confront that fear, right? And so again, just really asking those open-ended questions so that children are elaborating on what they are thinking, experiencing, and feeling. And so just to provide some additional examples, some of us are going to very readily be able to come up with questions, and your child is going to respond and elaborate, and it is going to work very beautifully. And then for others of us who may have a child like Elijah, who, when you say an open-ended question, no matter how open-ended it is, he may not give you the most detailed response, right? And so we have to think of creative or other innovative ways to kind of encourage that open communication. And so on the screen, I just have two real life examples that you may be able to use with the child or children in your life. So just thinking about how might this apply. The first way is going to be with younger children. So you may have them on just a blank piece of paper to just draw a stick person in the center of that paper, and then to add various pictures about to show you what they experience when they are feeling anxious, right? And so really asking them to just draw it out, right? Maybe they don't have the language or the vocabulary, or maybe the words are just not coming out right. And so giving them that opportunity to draw it out may lead to a conversation, right, between you and your child. With older children, this may look a little bit differently. You may complete something like a mind map. So you may have the child write anxiety in the center of a page and simply just write all of the words that come to their mind that relate to their experiences when they're experiencing anxiousness. This may also look like reading books about emotions or watching movies about emotions to encourage children to share what it feels like in their mind and body when they're anxious. And so on the screen here, I've just included some examples of books and a movie that discuss or show how children can manage emotions. And so it is completely okay to choose books that focus broadly on several different emotions, and or to choose a very specific book that focuses on a specific emotion or anxiousness that relates to what your child is dealing with. And so I hope you all can see this. I'm not really sure. I'm just going to, can you all see this book? Hopefully. So if not, it is Sui, and it is Lupita's book. I won't keep showing it, but the reason why I'm bringing this example is because my family relocated from Florida, where my son was in a really diverse Montessori school, to Colorado, and he was in a not so diverse Montessori school. And so one of the things that he really struggled with and brought about feelings of anxiousness was really this sense of being the only one in his classroom and in his school community, right? And so he struggled a lot with his identity and how to feel comfortable with his identity, his racial ethnic identity, how to not feel like he should not talk about it, not feel like he shouldn't acknowledge it, not to feel like there was something good and or bad about it inherently, right? And so one of the things, in addition to all the other emotion books that we kind of talk about in our household, this particular book was really good for him in terms of being able to give him the language or being able to show him, hey, this is someone who's having a very similar experience. That's actually what it feels like, mom, right? So when I'm throwing a tantrum or when I'm crying or when I'm shaking my head because I don't know the words, it's really that I don't know what I'm experiencing. I just didn't know how to tell you that it's like, oh, this skin of mine is what I'm thinking about in these situations. And it's bringing about this feeling that causes my heart rate to increase and tears to come in my eye. I mean, I feel this sense of panic, right? And so, again, for this particular strategy, for students who don't, or children who don't have that language, really having those visual aids and resources can help them be able to say, that's actually what I'm experiencing, right? Or that actually is the issue that I wanted to talk to you about, right? And that's kind of what it looks like when she's dealing with her sister and being different in her family. But that's what I'm experiencing when I go to school and I'm the only one in my environment. And so also when it comes to creating a supportive environment, one other strategy that I really quickly wanted to talk about was going through kind of like a stress bucket activity with your child. This can work for younger and older children. And the reason why I like this particular activity is because you not only get to focus on the experiences and the situations that are causing the anxiousness, but you can also think through and problem solve with your child about ways in which they can cope. And so you'll hear me say this often too, is that like children are people, right? And they know about what they're experiencing and they are the authors of their story. And so a lot of times we want to give them a solution or tell them how to fix things when they have already kind of thought through how they want to solve something or what it would look like and the supports that they need to be able to solve it. And so for this particular activity, you'll just think about your child as being the bucket right in the center of the page, taking it all in. And this is a lovely visual, but I just want to state that you do not need to print out anything. You can draw a bucket in a very simple line notebook paper. Don't feel like you need something as fancy as this. It really is just the process of having the conversation and going through the examples. So your child being the bucket, and then you can think of the water as very small things, so small drops of water that may be situations or places that are causing anxiousness. And or you can think of it as being streams of water, right, that are going into the bucket that are larger situations, issues, places that are causing more significant anxiousness. And so after you've kind of had your child write out or draw out those experiences and situations, then you'll kind of go through and think about what are the ways in which we or you can cope with this issue, right? How can we make sure that you feel like although I'm having this experience, I'm going to be able to navigate that anxiousness. And I just want to say that for all of the examples that I've just provided, that the key really to those open conversations is really going to be to make sure that you are validating your child's experiences, right? So even if you don't understand what they're worried about, even if you're not worried about the same thing, even if sometimes it seems nonsensical, right? So for Elijah, for the longest, his thing was like, you may not come pick me up from school, right? You may forget about me one day, as if I could ever forget about the 8-year-old that belongs to me, right? But this was a real point of anxiousness. And so even when he was describing those situations, just making sure to validate his experiences. So what he's experiencing is okay. And then also listening intently and making sure that I'm not judging him for sharing his truth. And then the final piece that I'll share about creating a supportive environment is just to make sure that you are helping your children take care of their daily needs. So this may look like having a daily schedule or family routine. So building some type of structure so they know what to expect. Building healthy habits so that they are supporting their mind and body wellness. So making sure that they're getting enough sleep, drinking water, making sure they're having a balanced diet and nutrition, engaging in activities and experiences that bring joy. So I am very big on joy. And so joy may look like spending time with family. Joy may look like spending time with friends, making sure that they're having those experiences and that they're really enjoying their time. And then the last thing I'll share about creating a supportive environment is just prioritizing rest. And so this to me is a little different than sleep when we're in REM sleep and we're enjoying sleep each night. What I mean by rest is sometimes we are on the go, go, go. And we don't realize that children are also on the go, go, go. And so rest may look like, hey, although Monday through Friday we have a very tight schedule because we have school and extracurricular activities, and we may have even religious activities or social events, that there is going to be some type of sacred time that we set aside to prioritize rest. And so for some children, that looks like staying in their pajamas and just watching TV or just lounging around in silence or reading their favorite books, right? Or just sitting next to you. Whatever it looks like, just prioritizing rest so that when they get into those situations where they have to engage and be energized and pull all of their cognitive resources and focus, that they are in a place where they can do that. The second strategy I like to discuss is really teaching children coping skills so that they're able to manage the anxiousness that they are experiencing. And so, for example, you can teach and practice deep breathing and grounding techniques. You can engage in a role play. As I like to say, I am the drama, my child is the drama. So we very much like role play and all things drama. And so sometimes just having him go through and practice what he's going to do or say in certain situations really helps with his anxiousness when he then has to go into that situation. And then finally, in terms of teaching and coping skills, you can use different tools and or create tools. And so that may look like a worry box where children can write or draw out their worries, and or they can create a self-soothing box or have some type of self-soothing tool that they use. Again, depending on your child and your family dynamics, one of these examples may work. Several of them may work, and or you may need to continue trying different things in order to find what works. And so these are just some example of deep breathing and grounding exercises. The first is a very simple exercise. It is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding exercise. I really like this one because when children are experiencing that fight or flight response, right? So their elevated heart rate, they're sweaty, they're unable to concentrate, having them pause for a moment and think about things in their environment sometimes helps bring them to that calm place. And so they can whisper it to themselves, they can state it to you, they can just think about it in their mind, whatever works best for them. But they want to think about 5 things that they can see, 4 things that they can touch in their environment, 3 things that they can hear, 2 things that they can smell, and then 1 thing that they can taste in their environment, right? And so again, by the time they get to 1, we should see that fight or flight response, that feeling of anxiousness has calmed, and now they're able to think and communicate and process some additional coping mechanisms. Another example is going to be the starfish breathing exercise. Again, you can draw it out, you can print it out. At one point in time when Elijah was going to and from school, I had this taped on the back of the passenger seat in my car, and it was simply so that he could remember to go through this deep breathing exercise as I was dropping him off to school. And so essentially the child as well as the parent can simply just place your finger on one of the words, and you are going to do exactly what the image is commanding you to do. So where it says hold, you want to hold your breath. Where it says exhale, you want to exhale. Where it says inhale, you want to inhale, and you want to go around the entirety of the starfish. And then finally, just some rainbow breathing. And so children and parents are going to go through breathing exercises, inhaling and exhaling as they are tracing the colors of the rainbow. So again, as you all can probably tell, this is the former teacher in me and the person who loves all things reading and books. Some additional coping skills, as I discussed, was like the worry box. And so this is a really nice book that talks about the worry box. And so you can essentially just create a worry box at home. And so when you see that your child is worrying about something, they can just write that worry down and they can place it into the box, right? And so sometimes just getting out that worry, putting it somewhere else helps them to be able to say, okay, that's the worry. We got it out. And now I'm able to focus on another task, right? Now I'm able to focus on or concentrate on whatever is in front of me besides that worry. For some children, like Elijah, if you give him a worry box, he'll be writing worries for hours, right? So he will find something to worry about. And so for some children, you may want to take the worry box and create a worry jar, or regardless of whether it is a box or a jar, you may want to place a time limit on it. So for example, for Elijah, let's say he has 2 minutes to listen list out his worries, right? And he's going to list them out on his color paper and he's going to draw them and he's going to really get into these are all of the things that I'm worried about. And at the end of those 2 minutes, he's going to place all of those worries in the jar and then we're going to focus on what's in front of us, right? And the reason why sometimes the time limit works, again, is because some children, if you let them, they'll ruminate. And so we really don't want them to get stuck in that anxious moment, right? Or to get stuck on those worries. We want them to be able to discuss them. We want to call them out. We want to acknowledge them. And then we want to get to that and then what moment, right? And so, and then what do we do now that we know what we're worried about? And then finally, the third strategy that I want to talk about is modeling healthy habits and coping skills. And so I can remember as a child, a lot of adults would say, do as I say, not as I do, right? And so for some children like myself, that worked pretty okay, right? And so for my wild card, Elijah, that does not work. So if I say that we are not eating in the living room, he is going to be looking around because he wants to make sure oh, I think I see mom with a bag of chips in the living room, and I don't think we're supposed to be eating in the living room. And so for children like that, they really want you to be able to model what they should be doing so that when they're observing you, they're taking that in and they're saying, okay, this is what I should be able to do. And so a few things that you can do is practicing deep breathing when you are experiencing anxiousness. You can engage in positive self-talk so I can move forward even when I am anxious. And you can be very explicit and say it out loud as you're moving and walking through the house, or whether you're driving in the car or taking public transportation, so that your child is hearing that positive self-talk and they begin to learn how they should be positively talking or to themselves. You can also take breaks. So, showing children what it's like when we're in those anxious moments. Sometimes we need to take a break and regroup and then come back to a task or engage in a moment. You can also discuss your own experiences with anxiousness and how to manage it. Sometimes, as parents, as caregivers, we like to think that we have it all together. We want to show our children that we are parents and caregivers for a reason, right? And that is not to take away from our competency or to say that we're in this role and we know what we're doing. But sometimes it really helps children to know that, hey, even though mom or grandma or aunt or uncle or dad, even though they're much older than me, I still see them going through, right, anxiousness. And they're still discussing this as something that they're going through, right? And so instead of thinking of it as an end all be all or that it is going to be a problem that is solved, what you're really teaching them is like, hey, this feeling is going to keep coming up. And it is not that we're concerned about it coming up. We just want to make sure that we're prepared and we're able to cope with that feeling. And then finally, use your resources. And so YouTube has a ton of deep breathing and mindfulness exercises for children. Forums like this, workshops like this, where you can have conversations with other parents and learn different tools and resources are always helpful. And as I'll talk about in a moment, reaching out to different community centers, your child's schools, different professionals who can also provide resources on how you can model and engage in sort of these healthy habits and coping skills. And so the final thing that I want to talk about today is really, so you keep saying, Kia, that anxiousness is normal, right? And you've heard me say that several times throughout this particular workshop. And so one of the things that often comes up for parents and caregivers is how do you differentiate between typical the normal experience of anxiousness, and I use normal in quotation marks, and a more serious issue that requires professional treatment or intervention. And so before I kind of go over some criteria for when you should be concerned and when you want to probably reach out to professionals, I want to give you I want to give you some data that I looked up before this workshop. And so Research shows that 10% of children ages 3 to 17 have a diagnosed anxiety disorder. And research also shows that anxiety in childhood is a strong predictor of anxiety disorders during adolescence and in early adulthood. And then finally, research shows that childhood anxiety can cause substantial impairment in peer and family relationships, as well as in academic and professional achievement. And so when we're thinking about this question for what is typical, what do we consider is normal, to try to engage with coping mechanisms on our own and with our own children in our own households, I want you to think of three things. The first being is how is it affecting your child's functioning, right? So if the feeling of anxiousness becomes concerning in a way that it interferes with your child's daily activities, right? So for example, in Elijah's case, he did not want to go to school. So not only was it difficult to get him out of the car in the morning to go to school, but it was difficult to get him to stay in school, right? So he would say, my stomach hurts. I want to go to the nurse. Can you call my mom? I'm ready to go home. Or on the weekend, when it was Sunday, it's like, hey, I have school tomorrow, but do I really have to go to school, right? So it is interfering with his daily activity of going to school and or interfering in your child's daily activity of social events, then that may be a cause for concern, right? The second thing that I want you to think about is extreme distress, right? And so again, some of those physical symptoms, some of the thoughts and behaviors are going to be there when children are experiencing anxiousness simply because they are in that fight or flight mode. However, when their anxiousness gets to a point where they are in extreme distress, that typically is out of proportion for the situation that they're experiencing, then we want to think about, hey, we may need some additional supports. I may want to talk to someone about this because, again, we do not want to see, even though I'm telling you that this is a normal emotion, that children are going to experience it, and we should be working with them on coping. We don't want our children to be in extreme distress. And then finally, I want you to think about how long these experiences of anxiousness and these anxious feelings last. So if you're seeing that your child's anxiousness is lasting for weeks or months at a time, or they are continuing to worry about the same issue over and over again, then that may be cause for concern. And we generally want to get some additional supports and resources. And so by additional supports and resources, again, I just want to say when anxiety is strong, it lasts for a long time and it begins to impede your child from being able to perform or engage in daily routines, that is a cause for concern. And typically, you want to make sure that you are reaching out to professionals who are able to assist. And so that may look like your child's pediatrician or their primary care doctor, who can, one, not only assess and examine and get some information about what they're experiencing, but they can also check for other health concerns that may be impacting these experiences. Two, you want to make sure that you are reaching out to your child's school. So a lot of time in schools, there are going to be counselors and social workers who are there to not only engage in whole group or whole school or whole class supports, but they're also able to differentiate and provide some additional supports for children who need more targeted supports. And then finally, of course, I'm always going to advocate for mental health professionals and engagement in mental health professionals. And sometimes, depending on what our children are experiencing and how they are experiencing it, we may just need to go ahead and reach out to a mental health professional so that they can get the support and the additional resources that they need. And then I will close out there. But before I close out, I just want to say that one of the things that my grandma and I always laugh about is that there is no parenting manual. And unfortunately, you don't know what type of child you have, their temperament, their likes and their dislikes, their future goals until they are here, right? And so, in thinking about that, this is really a learning process. Some of the resources and the strategies that I provided today are going to work very easily with your child. And then some of them may not work, right? And you have to continue to try different things in order to figure out how to best support your child as they are navigating these experiences of anxiousness. And so with that being said, thank you all. I went a bit over time. I can talk, so I apologize, but I
That was
will stop
fantastic.
there.
Oh, it was amazing,
That's
Pia. Thank you so
amazing.
much. That was so good. And we have a little like chat that we have, and we were like, oh my God, this is so good. There's so many good strategies. So
Well, thank you all.
fantastic.
Thank you. I apologize for going over. I
Oh,
have
that's
my phone
fine.
timer. I have
Oh my
another
gosh.
timer, and still no timer was stopping my time.
Oh, it was, well, thankfully, thank goodness.
This is Kia, this is a very important work that you do, and this is great information. A lot of it, I have an 8-year-old, almost 8-year-old, and he's on the autism spectrum, and with the anxiety, the ADHD, all of that stuff.
Yes.
So a lot of it, he comes home when, especially when I'm driving, and I'm getting, Mom, take a deep breath. And so all these techniques that he uses at school, he definitely asked me to do the same in certain
Yes.
situations. I actually have a question for you.
Yes.
Um, now, this is on the parent end, because, when I see, a lot of parents out in the grocery stores, especially on airplanes, airports, where things can get very stressful. How do we rally around parents, especially parents who are people of color as well? Because a
Mhm.
lot of the times they don't want
Mhm.
you stepping in when their child is having a tantrum. Sometimes they're just having tantrums. Other times you could tell there's more going on. But
Yep.
especially in public, how do we try to rally around parents whose child is clearly having, some, especially younger kids who are having like anxiety and having tantrums without being judgmental? Because I know that parents feel judged when their kid is out there. You're like, oh, well, I would have, just brought him in the bathroom and give him a little whooping, when that's really not what's going on. So that's my question. Like, how do we rally around these parents around, when they take their kids outside?
Absolutely. That is a great question. And I will say I've been there, I've seen it, and I've navigated this a few ways. The first way is, and it just depends on the level in which the situation has escalated. So there are going to be some times in which you just won't have the opportunity to like directly say something to the parent or caregiver and they respond back to you, or they may respond like, ma'am, do you not see that I am in the middle of a situation? Like, I don't want to talk to you, right? So one way in which I do it is if they're in a moment or I see a moment where I can kind of intervene, I'll say, oh, and I love, and Elijah has to get used to this. I use Elijah all the time. And so I'll try to bring that level of understanding, right? You are not alone. I've had the same experience with my child. He's just having a moment. Oh, can you have him try some deep breathing? That worked with Elijah really, really well. And then maybe try to talk to him, right? And I've generally found that working at it from that angle, where it's not that I'm telling you something because I know better, right? I'm not Dr. Kia, Dr. Jackson in the grocery store. I'm just another mom who has a child who's experienced anxiousness and they've been elevated. And let me tell you about that time and have them just try to slow down for a minute. You want to deep breathe. And sometimes and this may require a bit of um, awareness of your surroundings and how comfortable you feel. But sometimes if I see that, okay, this parent may be okay with me talking to their child, I may just say, are you having a day? I can tell that you are having a day, and I am having a day too. It is Friday. I'm tired. I've been at work all week. I can't believe that I'm in the grocery store. I still have to pick up dinner, and I really don't like the outfit that I have on. Do you like my outfit? Right? And that's funny, and we're laughing, but sometimes children are like, this lady is so bizarre that okay, I've forgotten about the moment that I'm having because ma'am, what? Right? But it kind of gets them in that moment where they're like, okay, let me take a step back, right? And I found that some parents enjoy that because it one gives them a moment to gather themselves. It is nothing like being a parent and you're escalated and your child is escalated and you're in public and you're trying not to catch a case, you're trying not to bring attention. None of the strategies are working. And so it really gives that parent that moment to gather themselves so that they can then like re-engage in the situation. And that re-engagement may look like the answer is still no, you're not getting that bag of chips. Or
Right.
that re-engagement may look like, okay, I did yell and I did get a little bit escalated, but let's like slow down and maybe we can talk about chips after we figure out what we're having for dinner, right? And so those are the two ways that I've found that works. And again, something that you said earlier is that it's hard though. I do want to put that out there. It is really hard when you're in public because you know that people are judging, right? You know they don't understand what's going on, particularly for moms of color. I think sometimes as a Black mom, I'm sure people are like, why isn't she yelling? Like, she just not see her child stomp? Did she just not hear him yell at her? Like, I would never allow my child to do that, right? And so now I'm feeling a type of way, and it has nothing to do with my child. It has to do with like saving face and feeling like I'm a competent parent and I actually know what I'm doing, right? And so I do just want to acknowledge for all of us in the room and then all of the parents who will be watching that that is a real experience. And some of it is going to, those strategies are going to work. And sometimes the best thing that you can do is to divert tension elsewhere. And so I know sometimes, and I've seen scenarios where a child is having a moment and then several people start walking over and everyone's talking. And I'm just like, oh, they just need a moment. Oh, go to another aisle. They just need a moment. We're just having a moment. We're just taking a break on this aisle. Maybe you want to come back just to kind of make sure that we're not escalating situations. So I hope that answered your question.
That was great. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Makes a
And
lot of
again, I
sense.
still struggle because I have an 8-year-old. And so sometimes talking to him like an 8-year-old works. And sometimes I'm like, I'm
Exactly.
not getting through. This is just
Exactly.
unfortunately we're having an episode in the middle of, Walmart.
Exactly. Thank you, Kia.
Yeah,
Love
yeah,
it.
thank you.
I love it, Kia, too. I feel like throughout this whole thing, you've had like so many of your strategies have had empathy at the center. Like even like when you were talking about, oh, when I was 8, I was so scared about this. Like, what are some of the things that just there's just it's such a helpful reminder when joining your child around or supporting your child around their own anxiety, how important that empathy and
Absolutely. Thank you.
yeah,
And empathy for ourselves, right? So I'm
yeah.
talking as someone who is providing strategies, but I don't want to come off as if I always get it correctly, right? Sometimes I have to say, you did not handle that correctly. That is not how we need to de-escalate. That is not what the
Yep.
resources say. And sometimes that looks like having those conversations with myself or my support. And sometimes that looks like having that conversation with my child, right? To say like, we had a moment today, right? It did
Mhm.
not go how it was supposed to go. You are 8, you were, escalated, you were anxious. I realized that it was a long day, so on and so forth. And I also contributed to this mess that we made because I didn't use my strategies, right? I was already escalated before we got into the store. I was already escalated before the birthday party. I'm actually just really tired and I just really need a cry, right? And so
Mhm.
I apologize. And right now, I'm going to have whole empathy for myself and as well as you because we are two people just trying to figure it out for like a better words.
Like normalizing it all, the human
Absolutely.
experience of stress and coping. Yeah, I love it.
Well, thank you so much, Kia. I just feel like my tool belt is full with so many strategies that I will be sharing with my colleagues. I'll be sharing with parents. I'll be sharing with teachers. So it's been incredible. I
Thank
have a
you.
question too. And I was wondering, you send your child to school and you know they have some anxiety. And how do you approach the school, especially if it's a new school? How do you approach the school? Do you talk to the principal, the counselor, the teacher, and then how do you prepare your child for that situation as well?
This is a wonderful question. And I honestly would love feedback because the way in which I navigate this situation may be a little bit different than others, but I know that I am holding sort of the burden or the awareness of who I am and the identities that I hold, and then also who my son is. And so I say that, and I should have shared this earlier, that a lot of my research in terms of academia is about identities, right? And sociocultural stereotypes that we hold about various groups and how that impacts how people treat us and how we're perceived, right? And so one of the things that I should have mentioned, if you all don't know by now, Elijah is a boy. He is a black boy. He's a black boy in the United States of America. And so I am always cognizant of when he walks into a room, when he walks into a school, how people are perceiving his ability to read, write, speak, do math, whether he belongs, whether he's behind. And so I have some anxiousness around him being viewed in terms of a deficit lens, right? Before he's even had the opportunity to walk into a space and you get to see his personality or you get to see how he performed on a task, and you're like, okay, Elijah does know some things about math. Okay, he is a little well spoken. I can see his personality. So I have anxiousness around that. And so I share all of that to say is normally I like to make my presence known before going directly into having conversations and supports. And so normally what that means is like, going to the open house, meet the teacher night, meeting the principal, introducing myself, making sure they know who Elijah is. For those of us who have shared identities, making sure they know my background, right? So they have some awareness of, okay, Miss Jackson is always here. So okay, I know who she is. I know who her child is. Okay, we've been around Elijah for a month or so. We're seeing these things. And then eventually when I get to a point where I no longer feel as if they're only going to go based off of our conversation or what I disclose, then I kind of set up those additional conversations. And so that normally looks like reaching out to the classroom teacher first to see one, if they've maybe observed anything that they want to discuss with me, if they have any questions about, anything that they see in the classroom, how it looks at home. And then moving or working with the classroom teacher to kind of bring the guidance counselor or the social worker in, right? So if you have, and I'm very strategic about the language that I use, again, because I know I'm worried about judgment, right? So if you have additional supports, like I would enjoy him being a part of these additional supports, small groups. Something that we're still navigating is anxiousness, right? And so I try to, even with my language, just say, like, we're still navigating this. This is something that we're still working on. Not that this is a problem area and we need to solve it, or this is a problem child and we need to solve it. And so for parents like myself who are holding all of these things in the back of their mind and they're worried about judgment and they're worried about how their children are perceived, I would definitely say, one, making your presence known, right? Very upfront, making sure that you're engaged, making sure that they know who you are, they know who your child or children, who they are, and that you have that open line of communication, right? And then gradually starting to have some of those conversations first with what they're observing at school, and then you can kind of share your journey with what you're seeing at home, maybe what you've experienced at other schools, and maybe kind of sort of some of the goals that you have for your child, and how you like to partner with the school to make sure that they're able to meet those goals. So I hope that answered your question. I know it's a lot. And I apologize.
Well, Dr. Kia, I just feel like we need another hour of this minimally. You are a wealth of knowledge, and I want to thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank
To the
you.
end here, and we need to wrap up. But I do want to echo what everyone said, is so many strategies. And I wish there was a way we could get this information out to everyone. I really, really like want to also echo what Megan said about like everything that you've said is coming with empathy. And I think that's a really huge piece. And then, of course, the validation, listening intently. I wish I could go back and re-raise my children with this information. Unfortunately, I can't. But I also like the idea of like us as adults teaching coping skills by modeling it. I think I know I've probably done my fair share of, and I've seen parents who model like how to be anxious versus the alternative, because we all deal with anxiety in one way or another. And then of course setting routines, rest. I love rest, healthy habits, all wonderful things. And the reality is that we all are going to experience it. We all experience anxiety, right? We need to learn to cope with it. We can't make it go away, even though in my head, I'd like to make it go away. But it's a part of all of our lives. I just want to remind our listeners. So thank you, Dr. Kia. Thank you so much. You were amazing. I want to remind all of our listeners that the first Tuesday of the month, we have parent learning events like we did tonight that start at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then the following Tuesdays, we have parent caregiver conversation events where you can come and chat about what we learned in our family learning event. The first Tuesday is elementary. The next Tuesday is secondary, middle, and high. And then the following Tuesday is our BIPOC affinity group. And again, those are all at 7 p.m. In both time zones. And then finally, I did want to remind everyone, we have our You're Not Alone Bright Parents event coming up. That is Sunday, March 16th from 1 to 4:30. I want to emphasize it is a free event. And so the flyer is linked in the comments. There's a QR code for that. We were going to have certified parent coach Destiny Ann Davis. You can look her up on Instagram. She is amazing. She will be speaking at our event. And then we will have opportunities to, communicate and connect as a group. It will be at Lowell High School and in Lowell, Massachusetts. And let's see what else. We have free food. We have free childcare. We provide assistance with transportation for up to 25 miles. We have free books. We have free Dunkin' gift cards. You name it, we've got it. So we would really love to meet with you and see you there. I hope you'll join us. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Kia.
Thank